Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Leadership America, where we're creating champions of change through a culture of civility. I'm Angel Carlton.
And I'm Scott Murray, and when you talk about civility, we've got some issues here in the good old US of A, but we'll address some of those things coming up shortly. But in the meantime, we are most excited to welcome a gentleman that I got a chance to meet, a long time ago. But
don't date yourself.
Yeah,
Scott.
don't date myself.
Me and you both.
I will say this. He was the winner of the Outland Trophy as the outstanding lineman in college football. That was back in 1987, 33 years ago. And since that time, he has garnered an incredible career as a member of the Dallas Cowboys football team from the years, 1992 to 2000, right? And he was, I remember being up at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, because that's where the Cowboys training camp was in the early 90s. Jerry had bought the team in 1989, and then they went to Wichita Falls, and you were there, and I remember coming over and doing a story on this guy that was the Outland Trophy winner just a couple of years prior. He was an incredible guy, and now he was off to be a part of the Persian Gulf War, and was a member of the Air Force, went to the Air Force Academy, and you had 45 missions in your, what was it, A-15? Is it, what was it?
A-10.
A-10, in an A-10. And 45 missions. That's unbelievable. So let me start by simply saying, hello, my friend, but more importantly, thank you for your service.
Oh, my pleasure, Scott.
Chad
nice
Hennings,
to be with you.
Yeah.
true champion. Wow.
Yeah, and 3 Super Bowl rings to go along with that. Those 45 trips in the A-10, huh?
Here's
right.
somebody who's, won 3 Super Bowl champions, a champion in the military and defending our country and our freedom, a champion in life. You've written 3 books sharing Christian principles and the importance of character and everything that we talk about here at Leadership America. It's really a privilege to have you here live and meet you in person. So
Awesome.
Tell us
Glad
about
to
One of the good guys, Angel.
I tell you
one of the really good guys.
It's really,
Well,
really
here's
special.
Yeah, and it's special because of the fact, as I said a minute ago, courage, commitment, character, compassion, and conversation. Those are the 5 verticals under the Leadership America, and the 5 C's that really kind of, you put them all together, and if you do it right and effectively, you become that champion that we all want to be, whether it's in work, whether it's in life, whether it's in school, wherever it might be, just with family and friends. So, and you certainly, how would you describe a champion? How would you define a champion?
You know, Scott, I appreciate what you both have laid out is that aspect. They're universal principles. I mean, universal truths that we all aspire to be like. You know, one of those things that growing up on a farm in Iowa, attending the Air Force Academy, flying jets on active duty and jets and certain combat missions, playing for a professional athletic team, what were those principles that translated across the board? And we all talk about living a life of excellence that, it really kind of boils down to that aspect of being your best self every day, encouraging others, those your teammates around you to do the same, and the organization that you're affiliated with, whether that be a family or whether that be your team, your business, your community, encourage it to rise to that higher noble purpose or cause, which, the C's that you just presented, they all fall within that. But for me, what is that to be a champion? From the verbiage I just used, it's, to me, a champion is a person who strives to live life of excellence. And what is excellence? To me, I'll put it out this way. It's identity plus integrity equals excellence. Knowing who you are, having that foundational truth of your worldview, but then no matter what you do in life, I've been a student athlete, grew up in a farm boy, student athlete, fighter pilot, professional athlete, businessman, husband, father, philanthropist, all these different things. And I don't have to put on a different hat. I am who I am. So it's that aspect of identity. You can, no matter what you do, your identity is the key aspect of that. But it's that integrity piece. For me, character. It's integrity. Walking it out of those principles that I just laid out, of realizing that it's not about you, being your best self, showing humility, willingness to listen to others, courage. These sorts of intrinsic moral and character values, that's what living excellence is all about. It's not monetary, materialistic gain. It's not fame and fortune. What plaques do I have hanging on my office wall? It's not, the opposite of the fact of our failures in life, the obstacles that our inability to overcome. Those things don't define who we are. It's that aspect of identity and integrity equals excellence.
So when you see our world the way it is today, as Angel and I have talked to guests, and we get to the point about the pandemic, and we talk about just what's out there. When you see this, what goes through your mind? I mean, you, as you said, you grew up in middle America in Iowa. It doesn't get much better than that. On a farm in Iowa, just as solid as can be, and you end up going to the Air Force, for Pete's sake, the Air Force Academy. And then, as you said, all the other things, you become a world champion, a Super Bowl champion, not once but 3 times. And now you share your message all across the United States with different groups as a published author and as a keynote speaker. So what comes to mind?
Utilizing an agricultural example, you reap what you sow. And I think from our cultural standpoint, with this pandemic and what this aspect of divisiveness has been accelerated, the pandemic just accelerated it, and this election year that we are in has accelerated this aspect of tribalism. And it goes back to certain cultural things that, again, identity, a corporate identity as to who we are as a nation. I'll get a little philosophical on you here. One of my favorite authors as of late that I've read a lot of his materials, a gentleman named Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. He's written several books, The Righteous Mind, The Coddling of the American Mind, and The Happiness Hypothesis. And one of his latest book was The Coddling of the American Mind, why this younger generation, these 2 generations, are the way they are. And one of the key aspects that they had was we're reaping what we sow due to a lot of the helicopter parents. We did not allow our kids growing up to be able to resolve their issues amongst themselves. They didn't have unsupervised play. We always had arranged play dates. That there was a kids get into a little scuffle. Like when I was a kid, we get into a scuffle, we get an argument on the playground. I scored a touchdown. No, I wasn't a first down. No, we worked it out. But now the kids would run to an authority figure and say, fix it. Our parent was always there not to allow the kids the opportunity to work it out. And this is what he said, is that basically reaping what we're sowing is the fact that these kids today, that they hear something that they don't agree with from a political standpoint, a religious standpoint, or whatever, and they feel that it's actual violence upon them, that they run then to their school administrator or an authority figure and say, fix it. We're going to protest. There's not the civility. There's not the aspect of conversation, of discourse. And it's accelerated during this time, and it's continued over time. And I think there are parties that like to feed that aspect of divisiveness. But the one thing, too, that we didn't allow a lot of our kids to experience was pain, failure.
And let me jump in here. One of the things
resolution.
that we've always talked about, and I used to take a lot of grief because I was one of the very few, if not the only one at times, there'd be all the dads around talking about trophies and, we got to give all the kids a trophy. I said, no, the team that wins gets the trophy. The pride that you have of knowing that you were on that winning team and you were just a little better than everybody else. We don't want to give a trophy just to give a trophy because you're on the team. You give a trophy because you excelled and you did your very best to be the very best. And I think we did a great injustice to all those kids. That was right after I remember earning my Little League trophy. Oh, I was so proud of it. I was 7 years old. But I've got that trophy to this day. I still have that in my study. Because we did that is not because everybody played. We did it because we won.
And it created that aspect of entitlement with the kids.
Absolutely.
But yet, the kids, we're not going to keep score. This is all a rec league, where all get their participation trophy, but the kids keep score. They know, how was your game today, son, in your soccer game? We won 4-6. Well, our 4-2, I thought you weren't keeping, we won. I scored 2 goals,
Yeah.
Billy scored 3, and they all scored 2. So they all know it.
Sure they do.
But we're not reinforcing that. But for me is also, when I mentioned pain, I've learned more through my failures and my inability to overcome, that it created resolve in me that knew that I had to, if I wanted to improve, if I wanted to achieve a goal, I had to get better. And that failure, it didn't create a sense of anxiety and fear, it created a sense of determination and perseverance to overcome, because that's life, right? That's pure life. And when we deny our kids the opportunity to fail, we're doing them a huge, huge disservice. And so that's, it's tough on a parent because you don't want your child to hurt, to suffer. But yet, I think that when your kid, you don't love me, and why are you spanking me? And blah, blah, blah. It's because I love you, because I know this is what is truly good for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I grew up always hearing the word no. No, you can't. You're a girl. You're too young. You're all these things. No, you can't. You're not allowed. And I vowed that when I became a parent that I would say the word yes to my child more than I would say the word no. That yes, you can. Of course you can. But then there's that balance of you have to say no at some point. But I think one of the greatest parenting tips that I can offer people is when the answer is no, turn it back on the child and ask them, what would you do? What would you do? Because that not only instills that conflict resolution and the problem-solving skills that are lacking in today's generations, but allows them to really think through all the different outcomes. So my question for you, Chad, is what, in your upbringing, what is so different about the way you grew up versus this generation, and maybe what tips do you have on how you've raised your kids?
I was very fortunate growing up. My mom used to work with and work for Dr. Dennis Waitley. He was one of the pioneers with Zig Ziglar, and Dennis Waitley was a former Navy Blue Angel. He studied the POWs when they came back from Vietnam, part of that initiative. But he had a series of positive motivation teachings called the Psychology of Winning. So as a young man, I learned all about the visualization, positive self-affirmations. How you phrase and communicate with people says a lot to your aspect of no. It was always, explain why. You get no, but to the point, explain why. Here's why. So the child can develop those reasoning and rational skill set. But that was a thing that I was driven in that manner, that I believed in myself, and we all have a tape recorder in our heads. That many times it takes, as they say, 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks to develop a habit. But it's that sense of repetition. And I realized too, through visualization techniques, positive self-affirmation, that I could program the recorder in my head, no matter what adversity I went through, that I could affirm who I wanted to be, to see myself achieving that goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is, I would learn as a young man, as a young athlete, for example, in wrestling. This is a story that I share a lot of times when I speak on perseverance. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, Scott, in the 55 years that we've known each other here. But my freshman year in high school, being from Iowa, I wrestled. And because that was the year in high school where you had to choose, which winter sport, wrestling or basketball. I went to a small school, so I played, every sport. So I went out for wrestling, and believe it or not, I wrestled at 138 pounds. I had to cut maybe like 9-10 pounds to get down to that. I was a skinny kid to begin with, and it was a pain. And I wrestled in junior varsity, and it wasn't, I had a successful career. I mean, a successful season, winning season, but it just wasn't fulfilling. And it was this point in time I was learning who I was as an athlete, as an individual. But then my sophomore year, my buddies were going out for basketball, that I wanted to go out for basketball and not wrestling, even though I was a better wrestler. I went out for the basketball team. And I soon realized that I'm not cut out for basketball, because you can't cross-face anybody, you can't tackle anybody. And I'd fall out of every game almost. Junior year, I go back out for the wrestling team and wrestled at 185 pounds this time. So I've grown considerably. And I had to cut weight to get that, but I made it to the state tournament. Made the goal, want to get to the state. Went out in the state tournament, as you do, at the Veterans Auditorium downtown Des Moines. 10,000 people watching. And I'm from a small community. I kind of freaked out mentally before going out, and I can remember shake my coach's hand. Went off as I'm walking to the mat, thinking to myself, "You're going to get beat. you're going to lose. You don't deserve to be here. And I went out, shook my opponent's hand, and I was slated, should have won. 6 minutes later, I lost. And I walked off that mat dejected and defeated, but then I made a kind of a vow to myself that I would never allow myself to be defeated mentally ever again. And I became a man on a mission. And this point this is where I plugged in a lot of this visualization techniques. I would visualize myself even through the football all off season, single leg takedown, double leg takedown, chicken wing, arm bar, near side cradle, far side cradle, crossface cradle, all these different moves. Before I go to bed at night, I'd visualize myself doing all these. And then, doing weights, this was where my blue collar work ethic came in. I was always a hard worker, but I took it to the next level. This was as a junior going into my senior year. So by the time my senior year wrestling season came around, I smoked through everybody. I either pinned them or beat them by at least a major decision, 8 points. Made it all the way through the state tournament. One guy scored 1 point against me because I cross-faced him too hard, gave him a bloody nose because he's kind of fishing out. And the referee gave him a penalty point, but I won. But for me, that's where the light bulb came on. And that's actually because winning that state high school state wrestling tournament as a heavyweight, that's when all the recruiting started to come after me. The University of where they started making offers, but I had already committed to the Air Force Academy at that time. But for me, athletics and that adversity was a pivotal point in my life where I was able to apply a lot of these principles we're talking about. But if I have the time, one other resource that I have found as a parent in communicating with kids is a book called by Carol Dweck called Mindset. This book is great. There are basically two types of mindsets, a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Fixed mindset, hey, I'm as good as I'm ever going to be. It is what it is, that if I can't get it done at my first try at it, I'm not good at it, give up. Versus the growth mindset, whereas, hey, if I can work a little bit harder on this, take a little bit different tact, work this, I can get better. I may not be born to be a pianist, but I can get better at it and improve my skill set. And there's a thing how you talk to your kids, as opposed to saying like to your daughter, "Oh, honey, you're so beautiful. You're so smart. You're the best. Blah blah blah." But if a kid then comes up against another child who's prettier, who's smarter, has a better grade point average, if they have that fixed mindset, they say to themselves, "That's the way it is. I give up." Versus a growth mindset, how you verbalize to your kids, "You know what? I appreciate how hard you worked to get that grade. That is a great job." Or I appreciate how you interact with your friends. You're so nice. You lift them up. You're humble in the way that you approach. That is really good, sweetie. I love the way that you do that. And then they develop this attitude. And again, it's a mindset, how you view yourself, your identity. It changes your whole outlook on life, that when I do get adversity, hey, who am I? I'm pretty, which is fixed. I can't fix it. But hey, I worked hard. Praise my work ethic, praise the way I communicate, interact with other people. That's how I advance. I mean, at least it fits in my mind.
I love that. And one of the things that one of the
positive behaviors.
No question. And one of the things that we both share is adversity breeds opportunity. And so you take advantage of that adversity and you do it in a positive, productive way that's all right. I can, like you spoke to your daughter. I love that. I think that's great. So she doesn't just walk in there, okay, I'm pretty, but there's a girl that's prettier. What do I do now? That's a great analogy. I like that.
I think we're all kind of experiencing this whole pandemic in different ways. Looking at addictions, distractions, revaluing our relationships. It seems like the light is being shined on everything in our lives, and we can't run. There's no more distractions.
Yeah,
nowhere to go. So.
It's when the old adage, these were the best of times, these are the worst of times.
Yeah.
And it's truly what you make out of it. The silver lining for us, for me and my family, we had a lot of time that we spent together, reestablishing those roots, reestablishing our priorities, reestablishing, our vision for who we are as individuals in our family, and truly what is important to us. And a lot of times, not being able to go out to eat at restaurants or go gather with friends, publicly, that's taken away from you. It realizes, I think we're all getting zoomed out. But that's been taken away. So where do we go? And it gets people back down to what is important to them. And you look at all these granted, the number of cases, everybody wants to track number of cases, hospitalizations, death, but what about all the other ancillary entities that have been because of these restrictions that we've had on? Number of suicides is at an all-time high, drug addictions, domestic abuse. You look at people who weren't able to get elective surgeries because of this, increases of cancer and or deaths affiliated with that because people weren't able to get treatment. And that's where I sometimes believe that, as leaders, as a leader, you're called to sometimes make the tough decisions, but look at this from a strategic standpoint. What is the return on investment here? What are the costs? And when you're shooting from the hip to make a decision that may be politically expedient at the time, but yet down the road, you're going to pay a huge deficit on that decision that, there's going to be more deaths from ancillary things than this COVID deaths. That to me is heartbreaking, and it's a failure of leadership.
Yeah, and the mental health as well, that impact on so many people. I just see so much fear. And
well, people were already in this country. We were the highest medicated Western civilized nation in the world as far as taking opiates, antidepressants, etc. Because people, again, don't want to cope with life. They want an easy way out, as opposed to taking different techniques from a psychological standpoint and how to deal with adversity, having friendships, relationships. I truly believe before this pandemic, for men in particular, and I do a lot of ministry with different men's groups and speak to a lot of men on what it means to be a man from a faith-based Christian perspective, but we had an epidemic of an isolated male where they were, in saying that, they didn't have relationships because of fear of admitting failure, fear of admitting that, hey, I don't have it all together, and just having those close relationships of friends. I call them wingmen, guys that you fly into combat or training with, you do life together. They don't have those. And when you're sitting home and you have to spend time in your own head, for some people that can be a very dangerous place to be, and it's a very fearful place to be. So what do? They want to medicate alcohol, drugs, opiates. I want to do anything but have to deal with life that's in front of me. And, we're losing our panache as a nation of pioneers and people that wanted to go out and manifest destiny to take on the world. And we're not that nation any longer. Or we're on the verge of not being that nation any longer. I'm an optimist. I'm going to use my words carefully.
I
here.
feel like we can't lose that. I mean, that's what our country is based on, entrepreneurism, and we can't lose that. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. We've just got a couple more questions to before we wrap up, but I'd like to have you just in a Cliff Notes version, just in a shortened version, maybe the top 2 or 3 things that you do share when you talk about men and moving forward in the mission and the message that you share when you go to these Christian-based organizations and say, you know what, think about this, guys. And some of the things that maybe the 2 or 3, if there was a list, what would you share with our audience?
And I think, again, it's a universal truth, whether I'm quoting a Bible scripture or I'm talking to a Fortune 500 company, to me, it's all the same. Well, it's identity. First and foremost, individual and corporate identity. Who do you choose to be? Because that then dictates everything foundationally that you derive all your thoughts, words, and actions from are from that. What is your identity? What core values do you espouse and profess? And then from that is, you can't, for men in particular, don't be isolated. You got to get out of your aspect of self-reliance and self and engage in relationships with other guys where you can accept, affirm, and hold each other accountable to go through life. It's all about relationships. And that's where this pandemic has been so destructive, is for those guys that were isolated, it further drove them down that rabbit hole. But for those guys that need those relationships, you just can't quite do it over a Zoom. I mean, our brains are wired psychologically to need to look into another person's eyes and
absolutely.
Their physical
it's funny
being.
You say that, because I learned that my degree's in psychology, and I learned that you have to have relationships. You have to have, and you got to look them in the eye. You don't do it on Zoom. You don't do it. You're right. You're absolutely right.
And that's all part of how we're wired as human beings. And I think, the aspect of empathy is one thing too. I look at, I'll tell you a story. My former teammates, Charles Haley, when we were playing in the early 90s, Charles and I butted heads quite a bit. He, at the time, and he'll tell you that, he was an undiagnosed bipolar, so you never knew what Charles you're going to get at the time.
Right.
But I didn't take the time to understand and learn his background, where he came from, and his life experience. Nor he did really mind knowing what I was going through with my life. We got into it. But then afterwards, I can remember a time when, this was maybe like 15 years ago, or maybe even less than that, 10 years ago. I was actually speaking at a church and talking. I was sharing a personal story about issues that we went through with my son and his health, and I saw Charles sitting in the audience. I'm like, what the heck's Charles doing here? So he just came up after a while as I was signing books, autographing books for folks, and I gave him kind of the brotherly bear hug, and I said, man, what are you doing here? He said, I just wanted to hear, somebody said you were here, and I just wanted to hear you and see you. I said, let's get together. We got together, and we went and through another mutual friend, we're mentoring some inner city kids, and I heard Charles share his story. And I kind of just sat back there, and I looked at him, and I go, man, thinking to myself, if I'd have known that, I would have had more empathy, more grace for you. And, from then on, we become, I'll do anything for Charles. As a teammate, but as a person, individual, as a man of faith, and as a father and a husband that he is, I will do anything for the man because I know where he's coming from now. And what that took was just the chance, conversations, to listen, truly listen, not just hear, but listen, and have empathy towards that. And that's what I think we need more of.
Yeah, we need more curiosity, to be more curious about each other instead of having that judgment and that closed-mindedness about you're wrong, that's the way you are, you're this, you're that, you're angry. Be more curious about people. Ask more questions. Why is this person the way they are? What happened to make you so angry? Asking questions.
There were members of the media, when he just talks about Charles, they didn't want anything to do with Charles. And I remember Charles coming up to me afterwards, and he said, you were the one guy that didn't criticize me all the time. And I understood him. Maybe I understood him. Maybe that's why I was a little more, laid back about how. But Charles called me, a few years ago, and said, Scott, I'm now going out and talking about mental health, bipolarism, what have you. Would you interview me? So we have gone to 6 or 8 different corporate and nonprofit events, sometimes with a lot of people. You know how I've gone out with Charles. And you just said you'd do anything for him? I would too, because he's come back around. He's got his family. It's great to see, because as you said, when you learn where he came from and what it was, and you learn the whole dynamics.
This is what I believe. Charles has probably one of the best, greatest work ethics I've been around an individual. But the thing is, he took ownership for his life. Mm-hmm. He took responsibility. He got better. He's from his substance abuse stuff. He got better, and he took personal responsibility. Right. That's the thing that we all need to do, and that would be another thing. Take personal responsibility. And again, live to be your best self every day. Encourage others to do the same, and the organization you're affiliated with rise to a higher, noble purpose or cause. It's not about you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Give it
Absolutely.
away. Yeah. Because I firmly believe the more you get, the more you give away.
Absolutely.
We flow through. We're not a dam. We're a filter.
Yeah. It's a circular world.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've each got a final question. You want to go first?
Well, I'm all about transformation, and that's my favorite topic, because I think we're going through a massive transformation right now as a humanity in general. But just for you, what has been maybe the most transformational moment of your life, and how has it impacted you, and how has it made you better?
Okay, I'll preface my remarks here in the fact that I love that aspect of transformation too. And unfortunately, a lot of people from an academic standpoint think that we can transform people's lives by getting on a whiteboard and identifying this is what it means to be an individual of character, to write it down, to read about it, to watch a video, to sit in a classroom and do it. But for me, transformation does not occur that way. It has to be modeled. It has to be experienced. You have to taste it. You have to see it. You got to touch it. You got to hear it and truly to own it. And sometimes that comes through pain. You have to experience the pain, the motivator, as well as, the potential success. But for me, my biggest transformation came, alluded to a little bit earlier when we were talking about Charles, was the health of my son. After Super Bowl 30, my son Chase, who was 2.5 at the time, got really, really sick. And it was the first time in my life that I couldn't overcome and change an outcome based upon my own work ethic or my intelligence or my own ability. And that's where I was truly humbled. And I was in a very vulnerable place that I realized that it wasn't about me, that I need other people in my life. And this was kind of what prompted me to form a men's ministry, the Wingman Men's Ministry that I have, as well as what I speak about and truly knowing who I was. See, at this point in time, my whole identity was around, hey, I'm Chad Hennings, the student athlete. I'm Chad Hennings, the fighter pilot. Or I'm Chad Hennings, hey, I'm a Dallas Cowboy. But that's what I did. It's not who I was or am. What you do does not define who you are. And that for me was a big transformational thing, going through that pain in that process of truly peeling back all the layers of the onion and getting down to the core of who I am and who I was created for as a human being and what my purpose and my mission is. And it's not to accumulate Super Bowl trophies or money or material things. It's to create impact and change in other people's lives. The other stuff, that's just a means to an end.
Wow. What a gift. What a gift that came out of that.
Here, again, perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
One person, I chose to go down that path. I could have chose to withdraw, to be internalized, to blame somebody else, to blame the doctors, blame the medication, blame this world and checked out. But I'm thank God that I had, parents, I had my wife, people surrounding me, friends that said, no, pushed me.
Great self-awareness.
Amen.
Look in the mirror. Awesome.
Excuse me. Now you know why he was named Father of the Year here in North Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a friend, Scott Murray, who helped me with
the
it.
world, yeah.
Well, but he deserves to be there.
I guess.
I know what kind of dad he is because I know what kind of human being he is.
Yeah.
And the message that he shares is what he shared with each and every one of us today. So
love it.
Then our final question. If Angel and I were to ask you years from now, centuries from now, somebody says, Chad Hennings, Dallas Cowboys, fighter pilot, good guy, optimist, speaker, author, the list goes on, but you as an individual, what would you like your legacy to be? How would you like to be remembered?
It's at that, husband and father, certainly foremost, because my legacy, I firmly believe, are my children. But, I'll put it in a biblical perspective. I came across I'll quote scripture, 1 Kings 2, verse 2, where King David was, as he said, I'm getting ready to go the way of all the earth. He's on his deathbed. His son Solomon is there. And in the last words that he says to his son, he said, son, be strong and show yourself to be a man. And what that means to me is that live your life, know who you are, be a man. What that entails from a biblical perspective, humility, taking care of others, helping the homeless, the weak, the downtrodden, etc. But to be strong, stand firm in the face of adversity. When the tide and the culture is going one way, if that's not the way, stand firm against it. The buck stops here with me. That's what I want. And it's that aspect of we opened up with identity. He knew who he was, lived a life of integrity, and he tried to be his best self every day through living a life of excellence.
Well, you've done a pretty good job at doing that. Not a pretty good job, an outstanding job. And you continue to do it. And you walk the talk as much as anybody I know. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We always close this show by saying live your life as a go-getter, but share your life as a go-giver. And that's what Chad Hennings is, first and foremost. So thanks to you, thanks to Tammy, thanks to your kiddos, thanks to your entire family and who you are and what you're all about. You're a great friend, but more importantly, just an incredible individual. So thanks for being here, Chad.
Thanks for inspiring us today.
We appreciate
Really.
it. So we're going to let you take it home, my friend. I'm Scott Murray.
I'm Angel Carlton. Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to check out leadershipamerica.net. And until then, just be your best self.
Thanks, Jad.
Bye-bye.